I'm Levi Page. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Crime and Scandal, and I'm joined by my co-host Alex Goddard. Hey Alex, what's going on?
Oh, just down here burning. How are you?
Doing great. Everybody, tonight we're going to talk about the latest in the Chris Hallett murder case. That's the legal scammer from the fraud E-Clause group. Remember, he is the man that pretended to be a lawyer when he had no law degree, had no legal training, and he would scam, in particular, women that have had their children removed from their custody. He said that he could help them get their children back and that he worked with Donald Trump. Well, one woman had a break and she shot him multiple times when she discovered that he was scamming her and making a fool out of her. That woman was Neely Blanchard. She's been charged with murder in Florida. And we're going to dig into some new developments in that case that's coming out in the Wall Street Journal. And I'm going to put the link to that Wall Street Journal article in the chat room so everybody can read the article as we discuss some of the new developments that have been revealed. And we're also going to have people that have been scammed by Chris Hallett on the show. And then a little later on, before we sign off, we're going to talk about Chris Watts, a murderer in Colorado who has a group of fangirls on the internet that are trying to get him out of prison. And Alex Goddard, my co-host, has a new podcast called Murder Groupies, where she talks about those weirdos. We're going to talk about that near the end of the show, but let's get into Chris Hallett first. Alex, this Wall Street Journal article regarding Chris Hallett, how a custody fight plus QAnon turned deadly. It was written by Georgia Wells and Justin Sheck for the Wall Street Journal, and they really whitewashed Chris Hallett, and it seemed to me they wanted people to sympathize with him.
Yeah, that's, if I didn't know everything that I know about Mr. Hallett, I would come away thinking that he wasn't all that bad of a guy, and Neely was the antagonist here. And, I don't want to crap talk him because he's dead, but, he does not make a very sympathetic victim once you know everything that he has done to mothers who are just trying to get their children back.
You're absolutely right. And what is so telling about this is a man who has preyed on a lot of women, Alex, and you've got some specifics that you want to get into.
Right. He, one of the women was actually mentioned in the Wall Street Journal article, and there are at least half a dozen to a dozen, if not more, other women who had gone to Chris Hallett and to Kirk Pendergrass. Neither one of them believed that family courts are legitimate. Both of them, family courts, kind of probably influenced how they behaved themselves and how they ran their quote legal business. They've ruined a lot of people's lives. And in family court, when a parent gets a TPR hearing, which is a termination of parental rights, that's it. That mother or father loses access and custody of their child. Their parental rights are terminated by the state. And there have been several women that happened to, thanks to Chris Hallett and Kirk Pendergrass. So, I wish this article would have, delved into more of that because, again, Chris Hallett's not here to defend himself, but he really, really harmed women who were desperate to get their children back. and he screwed their cases up so bad that some of them permanently lost custody and rights to their children.
If you're just tuning in, and I know some people are just coming into the live, we're talking about Chris Hallett, a 50-year-old man that was the head of this group called E-Claws. He worked with another man named Kirk Pendergrass, and they were basically sovereign citizens. They thought that the bar lawyers were corrupt, that our court system was corrupt, and that there was an alternative way to navigate the legal system. It was all a scam, and they were getting people like Neely Blanchard, the woman that shot Chris Hallett, to give them money. And they claimed that they were working with President Trump, Donald Trump. And one aspect of this Wall Street Journal article that stands out to me, it says this: Mr. Hallett, who was 50 when he died, created a life that revolved around his social media presence. One online adherent became his girlfriend. His followers provided him enough of an income through subscriptions to his videos, donations, and payments for adversary services that he quit his job at an auto parts store and dreamed of one day owning a private jet. So that reminds me, dreamed of one day owning a private jet. You know what that reminds me of, Alex? That reminds me of televangelists that go on television and scam mostly elderly followers. Give us money and, your sickness, your illness will be healed. You'll be out of debt. And what do? They go and purchase and jet around the country in private jets and get rich. And to me, Chris Hallett and Kirk Pendergrass are the same type of snake oil salespeople that want to prey on their consumers that consume their BS and believe it just so they can get rich.
Oh, yeah. Apparently Hallett had said in private that he believed that some of his followers were, ridiculous, was a quote, and out there. And, they were really into pushing this Sharia law. And again, in private, he had told family members that, it wasn't, it wasn't prevalent. It was BS. And, it had not taken over the family courts like he was telling his followers.
And Sharia law is basically what happens in Muslim-dominated religious countries, where they operate based on religion, which is Islam, instead of, a fair and impartial constitution like we have in the United States of America. It's a theocracy. And the United States of America, when you look at demographics, the breakdown of it, the majority of the people here are Christian, and Islam is a very tiny slice of that religious demographics that make up this entire country. They're a religious minority. So how is that taking over our court system? Sharia law. He knew it was BS, and he was telling his gullible followers that it was. And these are people that are in dire situations. They want their kids back. When people's kids are taken from them, they'll do anything to get it back. And he was preying on that.
Well, and the other thing with Sharia law is, we obviously have a democracy here. No matter how some people don't want it to be that way because they believe in their special brand of politics. But, it's this idea of Sharia laws in our courts is absolutely ridiculous because people are still getting due process.
Yes, and we want to talk to some people that have been scammed by Chris Hallett and E-Claws. I'm going to post the link to StreamYard in the chat room. All you have to do is click that link and you can come up. If you have any noise in the background, make sure that that is off before you come. We don't want any noise. We have someone with the name Anonymous that is on here. Thanks for calling in. What do you have to say about this?
Well, I was just calling in, and I do want to stay anonymous, but I wanted to touch on what Alexandria had said. I have been scammed by these people, and there's more than just E-Clause that's involved. There's other names involved besides Chris Hallett, Kirk Pendergrass, Timothy Charles Holmseth, Randy Erickson. We have Derek Gonzalez, David Strait. All of these people seem to run in the same circles, and they all seem to kind of get help from each other. I think the reason why, if you're involved with CPS or family court custody issues, you tend to relate to these people because, as Alex had said, they have had their own family court issues. And I think that's how they get latched onto your cases to say that they can help you, when in all reality, it doesn't help your cases.
Tell us, what did they tell you, and what did they promise you to get you to go along with them? Did you ever send them any money?
I didn't submit money. I think my case and story, they had said they were just going to help. They had said that at David Strait that I could get a group together, and if there was, I think it was between $1,500 to $2,000, then he would do a law seminar. But in my case, Chris Hallett and Kirk Pendergrass were helping and not charging me. But I think it was due to the following that I had through the internet, that they could get more parents to follow them if they had me following, their process, if you want to call it that.
Do you know of anyone that did send them money? Apparently, Neely Blanchard, the woman that murdered Chris Hallett, was sending them a lot of money.
I do know people that have sent money. Now, not necessarily to, I know one person, I've sent money to a certain person. There's other people. Derek Gonzalez is one that takes money and says that he can help you in your cases. Just, you give them money, they send you paperwork, and you're supposed to submit it to the courts. But I'm telling you, it does not work. It actually hurts your cases. And once I had realized the things that I was being told, and I kind of empathize with the Cindy Absug case, because it says that they were going to have her kidnap her child from foster care. I was told by Mr. Strait to take my kids from a supervised visit because I still had custody of them and had my parental rights. And they were trying to get me to do that. Good thing I realized that was wrong, and realized then that was kind of one of those pivotal moments that I knew not to stop following them.
And when we talk about David Strait, that's a man in Oregon that's kind of the puppet master for a lot of these people like Timothy Holmseth, E-Clause, Kirk and Chris Hallett, Randy Erickson. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to dig deeper into David Strait in a future episode.
Another thing that they do too is I noticed that they always end up, picking these parents because they're vulnerable and they can prey upon them. And then when they do what they're told, it always comes back that they have an excuse saying, it didn't work because you didn't do what we told you. You didn't do it correctly. You didn't follow the process. You didn't say something right. There's always an excuse to turn it back on the parent so that they can't, be held accountable.
And just to reiterate, what did they tell you to do exactly?
I was told to file certain documents with the courts, and that, if they didn't respond to that then, I filed another affidavit to the sheriff saying a writ of execution to have my children be returned back to me.
And these were false documents.
They're documents that will not work in a court of law, so they will not get your kids back.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
After you filed the documents, Did family court require you to have a psychological evaluation?
In my case, and it's hard to kind of talk specifically about it, but I was kind of
Right.
in a in a conundrum because they weren't giving me my hearings like they should have. So I think that's why I went to look for other help. But because I ended up coming to a dispositional, the adjudication and dispositional order, it was put in there that I needed to do a psychological evaluation.
Okay. And do you think that that would have happened had you not been filing all of these affidavits and writs that they were having you? Do you think that influenced that the court may have looked at you, that, maybe something's going on? And
Well, I think in these dependency and CPS cases, it's kind of one of those things that they do have parents do that depending on the removal reasons. But I think in my case, I think it would have happened anyways, but I definitely think that these affidavits secured the fact that, I needed to have one done.
right. Do
Did
you
they
think
ever
that
tell you
filing-
that did
Sorry,
they ever
Levi.
tell you they worked for Donald Trump?
I was at a law seminar in Minnesota where Mr. Straight had said that, he had spoken to Trump and he had been in the Rose Garden with Melania. He had gotten a hat from, the president. So these were the things that they tell parents, and that they work for this Pentagon pedophile task force. That kind of developed later on. At first, it was how David Straight had the connections to those people. And then the Timothy Holmseth, Randy Erickson, and the Pentagon pedophile task force kind of came outside of that with the E-Clause, so everything kind of like it all seemed like they kind of came together. And then the Q following, I think, ended up being because there were some parents like me that were trying to warn other parents to not follow this. So I think they were somewhat losing their credibility, and they're following through those groups and routes of the internet. And so they latched onto then the Field McConnell, you know what I mean? The Q and all of that. I think just to have more people who were giving money, donations, and things of that nature.
Do you remember, I'm sorry, I just got to ask this. Were you ever introduced to a woman named Sarah Dunklin, or have you ever spoke to Sarah Dunklin?
No, the reason why I hadn't is because I had already left and decided, realized that I was being scammed. So I
Right.
was already out by that time.
Well, I'm really, really glad that you were able to. But do any of the other names, Francesca Amato, Michelle Walker, David Jose, do any of those ring a bell to you at all?
Yes, those were two in the very beginning. Those, like I said, everyone runs together and they're all intertwined and connected. And they're
Right,
all friends
exactly.
with each other. So when you
Exactly.
find one, you can stumble on the other one, and they all seem to, and I think in some cases, there are really good cases where CPS has done things not correctly. And so when they find one case that, is really a good case and they have a following and people are supporting them, I think all of them kind of gravitate, latch on, and they share you amongst themselves, if that makes any sense.
Yes, they do. Absolutely. When I was talking to Sarah Dunklin, this is what she told me, and tell me if this sounds familiar. She reached out to me and said, I got your number from Michelle Walker, and we have connections to the president. I would love for you to come on the Phil McConnell show and share your knowledge. And this is as close as you'll get to the president, close to having a phone call. And I still have those text messages. And they used me to get other parents and exploit other parents because they trusted me.
I was told about Field McConnell and that they wanted to have my story be shared with the Children's Crusade. But again, I had gotten out of that and was walking away from this, knowing it was hurting my case. So I didn't do any of that stuff.
Right. Well,
Did you ever have any contact with Randy Erickson or Timothy Holmseth?
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, it was right after Timothy Holmseth was out of jail, and it was at a law seminar. And
where did this law seminar take place?
In Minnesota.
In Elk River?
I believe so.
And he was there? Was he with Randy?
Yes, and so was Kirk Pendergrass and David Straight.
And what was your interactions like with Holmseth?
Very, not so much with him. He was kind of very quiet and just sitting there, a lot listening to, and they were just saying how they were helping him. And then they had brought up about, helping with my case too, and some others. So,
Randy was there. What was your interactions like with Randy Erickson?
well, Randy at that time, she was just very, nice. She had put on, I believe, the event, but it was more so, Kirk Pendergrass and David Straight.
Did they charge people to show up?
They did ask for some money for like the food and stuff that they had put on. I'm not sure if they were asking for any other money or donations towards it, but that you could donate.
Did you see anyone donate?
I can't say for sure. I know that, some people put in for their food and stuff. I don't know if they donated prior to that, because I know it costs to get David Straight there. So I don't know who covered that expense.
Was Phil McConnell there?
No, Phil McConnell was not.
Did Timothy show up with Randy Erickson?
I think they might have been together, got there. I don't know, like, if they came together, but I know that, yes, you know what I mean? They were.
Sorry to pepper you with questions. I'm just curious about this whole thing, and I
am
appreciate
too.
you calling in.
I'm so glad you called in, because this is an eye-opener for other families. I can't tell you how long I've been putting the pieces together, and Sarah was like one of my closest friends, and I got really close to her, really attached, until the Cindy Absed case came opened, and that's when I put the pieces together, what they were really doing. And she used to say, oh, David Straight doesn't know David Jose. He doesn't like David Jose. Francesca is evil. And then all of a sudden, as I started digging into it, I saw them all, they promote each other. And then they have parents lie to people saying they're getting their kids back. Like Randy Erickson has a post out there saying that David Jose got his kids back because Donald Trump put a special order in just for David Jose that pistol whooped his stepdaughter for being promiscuous, and he got her back.
Well, I guess I called just to say one thing, because I think one thing that kind of hurt a little bit is saying anybody that follows these people has mental health issues or should have had their kids removed by CPS anyways. And I do want to say that that is not always the case. There are some times that you are vulnerable and you fall into this because the system is broken in the court process. And sometimes you can have a bad caseworker, but they take advantage of that. They see that, they know that vulnerability. And so I think if you can, I was just lucky enough to have a good support system. And when I had some people realize that I was going down that path, they helped steer me back, saying, we know your case is messed up, but you can't keep following them. And I do want to say that my case has been going on for a while. I've been threatened with TPR for years now, and I haven't been TPR'd yet. So that also wanted to give hope to parents that may have followed this bad advice, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to get TPR'd. I was lucky enough that I was doing the right stuff prior to falling onto these people, and I continue to still do the right things. In addition, I call it kind of throwing mud at the wall, and I was seeing what stuck. I was just desperate because I didn't feel anything else was working. But you can still turn your case around.
Absolutely. Here's a question. Did you follow your case plan?
I don't want to get into case specifics. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Because I really wasn't given a case plan. So I was just doing whatever I could do. So that's all, though. I just feel the parents, even if you've done this, you can come out of this and show that, yeah, I made a mistake. And as long as you can realize that following and going down this path is a mistake, you can still turn it around.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing what you can with us. One more question, and I promise that'll be the last. When you were at this meeting with all of them, when they put together this event, were there other people in your situation that were there and they were kind of roping them in?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I still see some of those people through the internet, groups and things that are still going down that path. And my heart hurts because I think sometimes because people were asking me what I was doing in my case, I'm saddened that they went down there. I realized and came out of it. And I think some are still, down that path.
Right. And I still see some of these people, such as Randy Erickson, still actively pursuing parents in these CPS groups.
Yeah, I
Yep.
actually had just seen her about a baby, saying that she could help and that they, doing stuff with people who are pregnant with open CPS cases. And let me just tell you, the advice that's being given is the absolute wrong thing to do.
Right. And you are correct. I mean, there are, like I said the other night, there are people who came from bad families and maybe they didn't have examples to follow when they became parents. And, like with Ashley turned her situation around to be something positive. But I think when Chris and Kirk and others like Randy and the others are actively telling mothers and fathers to, fight against CPS, they're looking at that you don't want to get your children back. And it seems like if you just swallow your pride and follow the case plan like they want you to, people do get their children back.
Well,
I
but
got them back twice.
Right.
Two
times.
I think what they're doing is trying to say, like, they're violating your constitutional rights. And I guess this is one last thing that I can say to anyone. That may be so, but at the current time in your case, the most important thing is to get those babies back home. And once you have them back home, then you can go back on any violations that they've done and hold them, whether it's a department or a social worker or whoever it may be, hold them accountable then. But you don't do that until your babies are back home. And so
exactly,
it's not about proving the lies and showing the truth as much as it is to prove that you're a good parent to the courts. And that's what's the most important thing.
That's the hardest part that families have a hard time with. Like, Minnesota, they had reason to remove my children. Arkansas, they did not. My attorney always told me, do what you need to do now, fight later. And that's what I tell parents. I don't care if they were in the wrong. I don't care. They have power, okay? We all know this. And the thing is that people have got to remember is if you fight them for your children and you say, oh, you're trampling on my constitutional rights, they're going to look at you like you're crazy because in their mind, they're like, oh, we need to save this child because of whatever may be going on. And the problem is that you fight them and you're going to lose. No, you will lose. Do your case plan. Do what you got to do. Jump over every single hurdle. There's a lot of people saying, well, I got my kid taken for weed. Weed's not a drug. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, weed is a drug. And I'm sorry, I got my kids taken for pot use and domestics here in the state of Minnesota. I got them back. They were threatening to terminate my rights, and I had to come to the realization that there was problems with me.
Well, also there's in family court, in dependency court, there's different it's different than criminal court. And that's the other thing I think is hard for parents to understand. And so they can take accusations and hearsay and those things there. So I think, like I said, it's the best to not really necessarily prove that they're lying. It's about proving that you're a good parent. And then you worry about all of that stuff later on down the road, once your kids are home and safe, because the system, let's face it, is broken. And in just one last note, like my kids in the system have been harmed more than they, were after, when they were at home with me. So I think, people got to look at this, that they can do and violate your rights in family court, and it's not fair, but, pick and choose your battles, and your battle is to get your kids back home.
Yeah, and I think they look at when parents are fighting, they look at it as oppositional behavior, and that the parents care more about themselves than they care about doing what they have to get the kids back. So all of this stuff that Hallett and Kirk are teaching people, it's not helping anyone get their children back.
What baffles me, Alex, is that these people are saying all this stuff and they don't even have their own children back.
Right. I mentioned that earlier, that ironically, I don't believe either of them were allowed to see their children. And
Nope,
both
and
of
neither
them
was Homestead.
yeah, and both of them have back child support, and Chris Hallett, filed his crazy affidavits with the state of Ohio, and he still owed the money. It's it's your child, it's an obligation.
And in regards to Timothy Holmseth, he masquerades online as this activist that is fighting for children, yet this is a guy that doesn't even take care of his own children. He
Same
has
as David
complained.
Jose and Francesca.
Timothy Holmseth has whined and complained that because he's on the run from a bench warrant, he can't see his son that much. And the reason that he can't see his son is because of himself. He has nobody but himself to blame, and it's his choice. I mean, he could have stopped harassing Kim Bocasio in 2011 when she got the restraining order, but he's so obsessed with her that he can't. And he can't see his son because of his own actions, and yet he wants to masquerade as a child activist. And our anonymous caller that called in, thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, just everybody that's dealing with CPS, like my biggest thing is just do whatever you can to get your kids back home. And then you worry about if they violated and any of that stuff down the road. It's not what's important now. And it's, like I said, it's not about proving, them telling lies. Prove to the courts that you're a good parent and that you deserve to have your kids. And then if you do those things, you'll get your kids.
And I want to clear up
advice.
If I made any comments that suggested that everybody that's had their children taken away deserved it, I want to apologize for that. I didn't mean to paint with a broad brush, and I hope everything works out for you and your kids. And I'm sorry that you were scammed by eClaws.
Thank you so much for inviting me onto the show.
Oh, you're welcome, and you have a great weekend in Easter.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bye.